If you go to the following IP address, you will find this slideshow with the animation. What aspects of math-related CALPS in English second language acquisition pose a challenge for middle or high school students who speak Spanish? By the year 2030, almost half the population in the United States will speak a language other than English, meaning the number of English language learners, or ELLs, in our school nationwide will also increase. From the National Center for Education Statistics, we find that about 9.1% of all students in public schools are designated as English language learners. This translates into about 4.4 million students, and this census is from the year 2011 and 2012. 8 of our states have a percentage of 10 or more that are considered English language learners. They are Alaska, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, New Mexico, Oregon, and Texas. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act was signed by President Lyndon Johnson as part of his War on Poverty in 1965. In 2001, President Bush reauthorized the ESEA, and it became informally known as No Child Left Behind. IDEA, or Individuals with Disabilities Act, was originally enacted by Congress in 1975 to ensure that children with disabilities have the opportunity to receive a free, appropriate public education. More recently, states have enacted the Common Core State Standards. These are universal standards that were formed, and the states that have adopted them with the idea that we will try and keep all of our students learning at the same pace, so when they move from state to state, their education is not interrupted. So, what do all of these have in common? Each were designed to create teacher accountability and ensure all students receive a high-quality education. So, how's that really working? If we look at SAT scores, knowing that most of the students who take this test are higher level and with aspirations of going to college, we still see huge discrepancies in the achievement between our races. The national average is about 1,509 out of the 2,000 points available. The top students are our Asian population, with an average score of 1,623 points. Our African American students average about 1,276 points. This is a huge difference of 347 points. The white students average about 1,581 points. This score is a mere 42 points below the average for the Asian students. But when we look at the score for our Hispanic students, their average is 1,362 points. This is 216 points below our Asian students and 219 points below the white students. As you can see, even the higher level Hispanic and Black students are lagging far behind their peers. Due to NCLB, our ELL students must be tested in all core subjects. Most states show this population scoring about 20 to 30% below their white peers. Most ELL students do not become proficient in their CALPS or academic language for between 5 and 7 years. In Kansas, we are required to test all students, no matter whether they have been here 1 year or 10. All of our ELL students must be tested. As a mathematics teacher, I need to know what words or concepts my ELL students will struggle with so I can help them lessen this percentage. Many studies have been done. The linguistic problems that I will be discussing with you have been divided into 7 groups. They include familiarity or frequency of our non-math vocabulary, the length of the nominal, relative clauses, abstract or impersonal presentations, the voice of your verb, conditional clauses, and our question phrases. So let's look at familiarity or frequency of some of our non-math vocabulary. Some of the phrases might be more than, less than, adjacent, steepness, or greater than. When they're used in a mathematical classroom, they have a totally different context than what might be used outside of the mathematical classroom. So we need to help our students build that math vocabulary. Building vocabulary skills should start in the native language and also in English. This will help the student to understand and be able to perform the higher order cognitive tasks. If you can use a thematic or interactive approach, you can provide multiple exposures to that key vocabulary. At Topeka High, each of our different departments are given different words to try to stress. They stress these words in their curriculum, not necessarily in a math context. One of the words that I was able to share with our foreign language department was slope. And they were able to incorporate talking about the slopes in mountainous areas in the different foreign countries that they taught the language of. So when we use this thematic approach, or we use it across all of our disciplines, then we can bring explicit attention to and maybe get them to connect the target words with the lessons across our subjects. All of our students struggle with word problems in mathematics. For the English language learner students, we need to shorten the length of the nominal. If you look at the example, the pattern of the puppy's weight gain, this can be shortened to the puppy's weight gain. When the students have more to read, it uses up their cognition that could be used in trying to figure out how to solve the problem. For our word problems, we need to use language light problems. Think about how children learn as they're growing up. When they're very small children, we use 1 or 2 word sentences. As they get older, the sentences get longer. However, until they're close to school age, most of our sentences that we use are very language light because they don't know enough words and they are not familiar enough with the language to do the language heavy yet. The same goes with our ELL students. They need this shortened monomial to be able to understand what's being asked. The voice of the verb phrase can also cause our ELL students problems. The use of the passive verb form needs to be avoided. Studies have shown that the passive voice is the last structure that is learned by our children as they learn English. Most students do not master this form until they're between 8 and 9 years of age. Many students who have disabilities might not ever master the passive voice. Therefore, we need to change the passive verb into an active form. If you look at the example, if a marble is taken from the bag, it can be changed into if you take a marble from the bag. The students who must devote substantial cognitive resources to our English comprehension will have less capacity available to devote to the math problem-solving operations that they need. So by using the active voice, we've lessened the stress on them and we've helped them to understand. Conditional clauses, like the passive voice, are some of the structures that are learned later as children develop the English language. Likewise, for our ELL students, they are learned later. So if we're going to have a conditional clause, we need to either put it in a separate sentence or we need to change the order of the conditional and main clause. In our example, if in a sample of batteries you found 2 dead, we would change it to if 2 batteries in the sample were found to be dead. This lessens the cognitive demand on our students and it makes it easier to understand. In the second phrase, it's very straightforward. The batteries, which are the subject, are in the front and the verb or the predicate is at the end of the sentence. This will help our ELL students to be able to understand what's being asked. Relative clauses need to be removed or recast. The relative clauses, like our passive voice, are some of the last structures that our children learn as they grow up and are learning English. Likewise, with our ELL students, relative clauses are problematic because of the way the English language is developed. Looking at our example, the total numbers of newspapers that Lee delivers in 5 days can be easily changed to how many papers does Lee deliver in 5 days. By changing it, we've made it simpler, we've lessened the amount of words the student has to read, and we've made the sentence very straightforward. How many papers does Lee deliver in 5 days? We know that we're talking about papers, and we're talking about Lee, and we're talking about 5 days. You don't have to reread several times to get the basic information. When our students have to devote a lot of their cognitive resources to reading the problem, then there's very little left to actually perform the math that they need to be doing. Our question phrases, especially the complex phrases, need to be changed to simple question words. If we're looking at the example, which is the best approximation of the number of? We can change this to approximately how many. By changing it to approximately how many, we've eliminated more than half of the reading that would be demanded by our ELL students. Our ELL students have the added demand of learning a language in addition to trying to figure out what the problem is actually asking. Each time we can simplify part of the task, that makes it easier for them to start learning the concept that we're trying to teach them. It's wonderful to be able to read, but until they can read at an academic level that would be the same as their peers, we need to once again shorten things up, lessen that cognitive demand so they can use the cognitive skills to solve the math problems. We need to take the abstract or impersonal presentations and make them more personal and more concrete. If we talk about 2,675 radios sold, it's not nearly as personal as if we talk about the 2,675 radios that Mrs. Jones sold, or if we talk about the radios that Miss Taylor sold. If we link the radios being sold to a person they know, it makes it much more personal. In algebra, we are taking the students from the concrete math into the abstract. Many times I will start out with a concrete example. I will say 1 plus 4 equals 5. And then I will start with A plus B equals 5. What numbers could we allow A and B to be? By giving them the concrete example and then taking it into the abstract, my students are able to comprehend what a variable is easier. So what should our next step be? Let's teach our students a language of mathematics. We could actually consider math a second language. The language of mathematics could be considered a second language. Mathematics is highly technical with characteristic patterns of vocabulary and grammar. Some of our technical vocabulary includes mathematics words such as sum or fractions, but there's also words that are not solely mathematical but have particular meanings. In mathematics, the words such as place, borrow, and product have a different meaning from what they would encounter in their personal life. So we know that students need to learn these multiple meanings. Some of the techniques we could use to learn as teachers would be having a word wall. That doesn't need to be only in an English room. A word wall in mathematics could have the words that we are getting ready to use in our next section or next set of concepts we want to teach. We can have the students do a word square. In the word square, they could have the definition in English, the definition in their native language, and then a picture to help them visualize what the word actually means. The visual representation of our words, those that we can do that way, is very important. Our students need to see that concrete. They need to see what our words mean. Many times I will have the students do a poster of a concept. This poster will help them clarify their thoughts, and that makes them put it down on paper. Once they have it down on paper, I have them get up in front of the class and explain what their concept was. By making them teach, that also helps them to better instill the knowledge of that concept in their own mind. With the adoption of the Common Core state standards, I have found that in mathematics, the idea is to have the students discover the content, to discover the concepts. In reality, this doesn't work very well for many of our ELL students. Our ELL students many times come from families that have been transient. They move several times, maybe over years, maybe during a year. Each time they move, the student has a break in their education. They might not be back into school for a week or two, and they have developed a gap. Especially in Algebra 1, we are expected to teach many different concepts over the course of 1 year. The concepts have to be learned rapidly, and the pace of the class is very fast. With the ELL students with gaps in their knowledge, they need more explanation. They need those foundations to be explained to them so that they can develop the higher cognitive skills and go on to the higher level math. As a teacher, I always worry about whether I am talking too much. I want to be able to explain, but not over-explain. I want to be able to have the students learn what they need to learn so that they can be successful in Algebra 2 or maybe even in trigonometry. But many of my students are found to have gaps that I need to fill. Within each classroom, the use of collaborative grouping has been very beneficial. When we group our students to where we have the different language ability levels within each group. They are able to learn from each other. Our higher level students can explain and teach the concepts to the lower level students. This means that they have a deeper understanding of the concepts that they are working on teaching their lower level students. The lower level students benefit from the discourse. They will learn to speak in math. They will be able to hold a conversation and use the mathematics and the mathematic terminology that they need. By using collaborative groups, you're able to shake it up and help the students learn better. And finally, what is our biggest responsibility as our teacher? To keep learning. We need to keep learning about our students. We need to get to know each and every student on an individual basis. We need to learn about our students' cultures. Each student has a unique culture all their own. Even within the United States, the people in New York have a different culture from the people in Kansas that I am around. Likewise with our students, even if they both come from the same country, their cultures will be a little different. I need to keep learning. I need to keep learning what research says is the best practice. The strategies and methods I use need to have a good foundation in proven research. I need to know what is the best for my students. Because I want to be the best teacher possible, I will keep being a student myself. I will keep reading articles. I will keep taking classes. I will continually learn what I can do to help my ELL population learn the math better.